a brief introduction to the three guests, and I'm sure the conversations will reveal much more. Abeer is a Nigerian-born Bangladeshi-American writer and photographer. She's published a coffee table book of travel photographs and poems. Her first book of fiction, The Lovers and the Leavers, a collection of brief stories, photographs, and poems. Her memoir, all of which is yet forthcoming from HarperCollins, India. She has degrees from the University of Pennsylvania and the University of San Francisco. Has held 2 solo photography exhibitions. Saad Hossain is a poet, writer, entrepreneur, and women's rights activist. She grew up in the UK and studied molecular cell biology at Cambridge. She now lives in Dhaka, where she is involved in various initiatives, including her travel and arts management company, Jatri. She is also festival director and producer of Dhaka Lit Festival. Her debut poetry collection, Sari Reams, was published in November 2013. A series of monologues, that which cannot be said, based on Bangladeshi women's experiences, has recently been performed in various locations in Bangladesh. She is also currently working on a novel. And finally, Saad Hossain writes in a niche genre of fantasy, science fiction, and black comedy, which on the balance of it, very few people actually want to read. Due to the stunning unpopularity of his writing, he's been forced to work in various industries. This includes drilling holes, making rope, throwing parties, operating an illegal sports book, and paying to run a restaurant. Needless to say, working for a living is highly overrated. His novel, Escape from Baghdad, was published in India by Aleph Book Company and in the US by Unnamed Press. I'm looking forward to this interesting conversation.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. The session today is named Beyond Native Informants. So what kind of things do we want to explore in this next session? Carrying on from a couple of comments that Vivek made in previous session, the themes of this festival are belonging, finding a voice. And I think we wanted to explore, as Bangladeshis, this is a Bangladeshi, as you can see, panel here, and I think from our introduction, quite an eclectic panel here. What do we mean by our voice? And are we pandering, or are we actually, do we feel a sense of responsibility about the type of voice that we need to project as a Bangladeshi, or as a Goan, or as an Indian? And just to sort of set the stage, I think I grew up in the UK. When you read, a wide range of literature, but when you come across something like Salman versus Midnight's Children, or Under the Rock, or Vikram Seth, Suitable Boy, it's something which appeals to you because it's writing about a culture that you can relate to. But having said that, that was sort of 20 plus 30 years ago. And we still seem to be expected to have a unified voice. It seems that others may be determining or wanting us to say something. And are we falling into that trap, or are we establishing our own voices? I wanted to explore, I think, some of these ideas. And you've heard a bit about, I've got 2 great people here, Abeer and Saad, and I think they're exploring their own voices in their own ways. Saad has written a very exciting, his debut novel called Escape from Baghdad, and it was described by Vice as Saad Hossein's perplexingly weird novel, Escape from Baghdad, captures the pure insanity of the Iraq War. It's a Tarantino-esque heart of darkness set in war-torn Iraq, filled with absurdism and dark humor. So starting with Saad first, did you ever feel the pressure or this kind of idea that you needed to have a certain voice? Were you expected to, because you're way out there, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is like, you're not a white. Why are you writing in English? Why don't you write in your own language? What's your problem? And then you have to kind of explain, okay, I write in English because, that's the kind of language, that's the language that I've grown up with. And then it's like, okay, then write about your own country. Write about your experience. Why are you writing about some other guy's war? And, that's kind of, what I feel is universally applied to non-white writers of English, is that you're only able to occupy a certain space. So if you're Goan, we want to know about Goan life from you. Don't tell me about Delhi life, like, you're not from Delhi. What's your problem? The thing is that if you, to get away from that, it's difficult, because even your readers in your hometown would be like, this is not a credible area for this guy to be writing in. And then, kind of the foreign readership, like Americans in English, would be like, we want to hear about the Baghdad War from, journalists or Iraqi people, not necessarily from some other random guy. That's essentially like, what are you allowed to write about? The thing is that we sometimes you get lucky, and it's kind of, you have to say that it's my version of the Iraq War. It's not about facts. It's not a travelogue. I'm not trying to tell you a historical account of what happened. I'm trying to capture what I feel about it. And, you have to accept that. That's what I'm saying. And, luckily it was funny, and so people liked it, but it could have been very bad, yeah.
Abeer, you grew up in, you were born, like outside of Bangladesh, but you're now identified as a Bangladeshi writer. And, this is Abeer's book, which has just come out, HarperCollins. And one of the things that I was reading on the back, as our friend Salil wrote, one of his comments is, these stories, together they bring to life modern Bangladesh and the lives and loves of its people, wherever they live. I was wondering how you identified yourself and what you thought about, what you think about this, your voice.
It is an interesting question. I grew up in Nigeria. I was born there, and I was always considered Bangladeshi there because I didn't look like anybody. I didn't look like a Nigerian, and so when and then I moved to the States when I was in high school, and again I was a foreigner there because I had just come from Nigeria and had a very strong accent and looked different as well. So when I decided to go back to Bangladesh to write this book, actually, I thought I would write a collection of stories based in Bangladesh. I thought it would be a little bit like a homecoming, but it was sort of like alien landing instead. And there were a lot of resonances. I ended up having a lot of really brilliant, beautiful connections with friends and family. But it was also one of the most wild and strange experiences I had had. So, and the other thing I will say about writing this book is I thought I was going to write these stories that were so different because they were set in Bangladesh with Bangladeshi characters. And I talked to lots of different kinds of people to get ideas for the stories. And I thought, they would be different than the stories I've been writing before. But it turns out that, as maybe a trivial understanding, but that people think about the same things the world over: love and ambition and family and loss and money. Like, these are all the same things. The context or the setting might be very different, but the things that people think about and worry about are all the same.
And Saad, I mean, some, sort of carrying on from what Abeer is saying about, the things that touch people or the things that touch you. And I think dealing with subject matter, but in a kind of, not in a kind of way that is repetitive or it's kind of expected to come out of Bangladesh. I mean, like for example, your book is set in Baghdad, but you've taken across, or you've tapped into that absurdness of war and the violence, and you've looked. I guess you've delved into yourself with that. What kind of makes you write the way you're writing rather than fall into the formula?
Well, I think there's a big a lot of pressure to write in a kind of literary way. So you're either a literary writer and it's very artsy and whatever, but sometimes depressing. At least parts of it have to be very depressing, otherwise it's not going to work. There's very little humor, and if the humor's there, it's not it's not overtly funny. It's like angst-ridden humor. And there's all these elements which you're expected to do to be a literary writer and not a popular writer. And then if you're a popular writer, you're basically pulp. You're writing fantasy or science fiction or romance. And it's just automatically, this is not worthy of talking about. Yet millions of people read it, and those are the guys that are actually making a living writing. I presume the rest of us are here doing this. But the thing is that I think there's a line between like literary type of writing and popular writing, but it doesn't mean that popular writing has to be bad, and genre writing. And the thing is that I personally want to be a genre writer. I'm not interested in monsoon rains and mangoes and stuff like that. I basically want to write science fiction. The thing is that I happen to be brown, and there's no market for brown science fiction. Science fiction is Asimov. It's it's basically white guys and rockets. Well, that's changing, but I mean it's changing because there's more people of color intruding in an area which is purely white. Some genres are like that, and so somebody has to break down the door, and it's whether you're able to do that, and whether they let you. Whether somebody will classify you as, okay, you're a science fiction writer, or whether they'll be like, no, you're an Indian writer. Just stick to that exotic shelf,
And I mean, I think I'll just mention something that we were just talking about earlier about being pigeonholed as the Bangladeshi there, so you should be able to talk on any kind of topic. I mean, tell us a bit about Delhi.
Oh yeah, well, so I went to the Delhi Lit Fest, but so the panel they put me on was terrorism. And I was like, well, I'm a science fiction writer. So I was talking to the correspondent, newspaper, heavy political, everybody there is like an ex-raw head. I'm trying to tell them about terrorism. I'm like, well, you tell me about terrorism, I'm not the guy doing it, you tell me. But the onus on, if you go to a festival in America, you're basically going to be the brown guy. So do the brown thing, do the brown dance. We don't need you to tell us about stuff we already know. We want to know about, whatever's happening in your country. So.
Abeer, you're based sort of New York now, I think, and it seems to me that we're going back to sort of the native informant, where in the West it seems that Junoda has had to kind of explain Dominicans to the Americans when they started to get interested in it, or Amy Tan, Kitchen Girl's wife, and needed to explain Chinese because suddenly. So now there are a lot of Bangladeshi cab drivers, and we see Bangladesh on the news once in a while, and you're representing Bangladesh. do you feel a responsibility, or can you get beyond that? I mean, I know that your new book is also trying to, but did you need the stepping stone to get beyond it?
I think I did start off writing what I knew. So I started off with, like, this book of short stories is based on characters, it's based on people who I had met, or based on parts of myself. And I know that when I started, so I did that just because that was what I was interested in doing. But when I started writing a novel about a couple of years ago, I was kind of determined to have it be as different from my life and my experience as possible, because I felt that's what fiction was, that it had to be really different. Of course, I have understood over time that it doesn't have to be like that, and there's lots of novels actually that have characters that are named after the author, him or herself. So it's an interesting thing, but yeah, the character in my novel is this white, bisexual, Christian drug addict who's growing up in California. So maybe some of those things are similar to me, but not everything all at once. And so it's been a challenge, but it's more been a challenge not in the sense of trying to represent him, but to build out a whole life of himself.
You just recently had one book launch in the UK where there are Bangladeshis, but of course it was in London. What kind of reaction and what kind of questions, how was that experience?
That was really nice. It ended up being kind of a room full of my friends, which was lovely, and so I felt like I was just telling them how, talking about my book and the process of writing it. In terms of representing Bangladesh, I feel there's not that many Bangladeshis writing in English. There's just a handful. Like 5 of us here are almost a majority of the writers out there. There's more and more. Anis just edited a Wasafiri special issue on Bangladesh, which was chock full of all these new writers in English. But we're still very much a minority in the South Asian scene. There's a lot more Indians and Pakistanis. In the Bangladesh, there's just not that many of us writing in English yet.
So do you feel a responsibility then to come up to write a certain way, or?
I haven't, but perhaps that's because I grew up outside of Bangladesh, and so I didn't have that many contexts to follow in terms of who I should write like. So.
But you feel Bangladeshi, or I mean, how does that play out?
I was just always told I was Bangladeshi, and I never felt it until I actually moved back and lived there for about 2 or 3 years. But yeah, after that, I think I felt a little bit more kinship with Bangladesh, but it took a long time.
I mean, some of us who are writing feel quite rooted in Bangladesh and the stories coming out there. But Saad, you grew up there, and you lived there, and you go through all the trials and tribulations of everything. But what drives you to write and come up with, I think, a very sort of fresh type of writing, which is not normally expected?
Well, that's the thing. I've grown up in Bangladesh, spent like 36 odd years there. I'm bored of it. I mean, why would I want to write more about stuff that I'm like doing every day? That's not very fun for me. And it's not a public service, since authors really don't make much. It's really about entertaining yourself, and to write about my house and my driver and my job, that would be very boring for me. It would be very boring for you as well, because it's not that interesting. But the thing is that you gravitate towards what's entertaining for you. I mean, if you're bored with your book, imagine how the readers feel. They'll be dying. Imagine what the people have to listen to you. They must be suffering every day. So, for me, I wanted to write about the big war, and for us the big war is the Iraq War, and mind you, we had a war in Bangladesh, the '71 war, but so when I tell people it's a war story, they're like, oh, you're writing about '71, but there's 50 million books on '71, written in Bangla, English, whatever, and I wasn't even around then, and it's not. you kind of write what's topical for you. This was the war that was kind of forming the world, you know, for us. This Iraq war that's kind of been continuing. I mean, it's probably one of the longest modern wars. It's just never ending. And yeah, I'm a science fiction writer, and also I hate doing research. And then when I come here, I realize that people do meticulous research. You know, the historians go to this libraries and they look at ancient artifacts. It takes years and years. You know, I can't do that. I can't possibly do any of it. The options start narrowing when you realize how limited as a writer you are. When you're like, you know, I can't do any research. I can't tell the truth. You know, I want to make off-color jokes. The genres shrink until you're pretty much left with like this much space, and you know that's what you have to document.
So was it a challenge? I mean, we were in a writers group years ago, and I actually saw the whole novel unfolding as he shared it, you know, bi-weekly with us. But you know, the question was always there, and we were so cut off from the rest of the world that, you know, how will this big book be picked up when people are expecting a certain type of literature from Bangladesh?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you get lucky, right? I mean, that's basically the reality of it. You know, what really happened is that somebody liked it, and thought it was funny, and then they gave it to somebody else, they liked it, and the publisher liked it, and then they sent it to a bunch of reviewers who liked it, and then they got good reviews, and then, you know, the newspapers reviewed it, and the Financial Times reviewed it, and then, so these things happen sometimes. I mean, I can't really explain it, but you can't ever think that that's going to happen to you. You know, you can't write with a sense that I'm going to appeal to this demographic, or this publisher is commissioning. I mean, you commission non-fiction books. You don't commission novels. I mean, that has to come from somewhere else. And if 10 people read it, you have to live with that. You know, you can't try and please people or think that you're going to be successful in some way. You're probably not. You know, odds are against you.
Abeer, I just want to go to you now. And as a woman writing from Bangladesh, did you? I think you sort of, a lot of women would feel you're pretty brave in the kind of things you tackle and how you write. But the flip side is also that, you know, are you falling into the trap of sort of an Orientalist trap, putting forward a certain type of version of women? So there's a double pushback there. Yeah, as a woman, did you feel any particular challenges?
I think maybe everyone from South Asia, or probably any immigrant or sort of diasporic community that I've come from, would have to worry about this exotifying fiction, and I would hope that what I write wouldn't end up doing that. So that is one of my concerns, is to write something in a way that has integrity, and but that doesn't romanticize the reality. And as a woman, I don't know whether I think about that when I write. There are concerns that I have when I write certain things about what people will think, but that's probably something that any writer might struggle with. I've written I have a memoir coming out next year, and I was really concerned about what my parents would think when they read it, or my family. And then I've also been working on a collection of erotic short stories, travel-themed erotic short stories, and I'm still struggling with how people will deal with that. My family, basically, how they'll deal with that. And I'm thinking about, you know, whether I would want to publish it under a pen name. Now all of you know that there's a book of travel-themed erotic short stories, maybe by me or by someone with another name. But yeah, those are the kinds of things I worry about as writing, but I don't know whether that's specifically gendered or not.
I mean, I think it's interesting. Maria Childry also brought out, you know, book Bloomsbury the year before, Beloved Strangers, and I think one thing that was refreshing about that was, I think, her honesty. I mean, her beautiful prose, but also, you know, the honesty. And I think that's a sort of a challenge for, I guess, you know, subcontinental women who are trying to get beyond that.
Yeah, I definitely think that was characterized as her book. It was very honest and quite beautiful. And yeah, when you have strong ideas about what should or should not be said, and what people will think, as I think Bangladeshis or South Asians have, then it is a concern about how people will react to your work.
I mean, one of the stories in the book that stands out is actually you're going a bit beyond sort of the Bangladeshi context and the tsunami. Tell us a bit about that story.
There's a story in the book. The book has all these linked stories, so some of the characters come in and out in different stories. And so in one story, there's a young Indian boy growing up in Barcelona. And in the story that you were mentioning, he's 20 years older and he's having a traditional wedding in Chennai. And it happens to be on the day of the tsunami that happened in 2004. And so I had, it's based on the fact that, I thought of the story because I actually went to a wedding on the day of the tsunami in Chennai. But then the characters are all, just, I had sort of imagined this boy growing up and what would happen if he's marrying a Spanish girl, but his parents have persuaded him to come back to Chennai and have us wedding. So, what that would look like.
And Saad, you've also been trying your hand at short stories. Again, I think a kind of refreshing take on something that in Bangladesh, we're familiar with, which is, jinns and ghosts and all of that kind of. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your short story and how you feel it's a bit different from the way, the stories that we've had growing up, and your perspective on that.
Well, yeah, that's kind of back to the native informant, kind of theory where you're gonna write about jinns, they expect the Arabian Nights. That's basically what anybody wants to hear. But that doesn't make sense. If human society has evolved in the last 2,000 years, and jinns are kind of similar, why would they be the same? And why would they be living in bottles? And why would they be going around granting wishes all the time? This cannot be realistic. The thing is that, okay, that's a good premise to start on. And, if you kind of push that forward, I'm kind of writing a novel on that and short stories on that, but I'm just making up an entire jinn culture. How I think they would evolve, given their parameters, long-lived, not very numerous, certain powers, whatever. But the thing is that there's a lot of material here for science fiction, for fantasy, and India's got the Mahabharata, it's got that's like 10 times bigger than the Trojan. The Trojan War myths or the Norse myths, which is the basis of a lot of fantasy, Western European fantasy and British fantasy. So the thing is, the materials are here, and it's not being used, I think, enough. And now it's getting out there, but there's that kind of barrier to writing popular fiction that stops people from using them. And they feel that they gotta write about rivers and rain and whatever people think India Indians need to write about, or Bengalis for that matter. For us, I don't want to write about 71. I don't want to write about famines. I've never personally been through a famine. I just like to put that out there. But the thing is that there's a lot of these expectations. You've got to kind of push back a little bit.
And what about writing in English? That we were talking about that earlier.
Well, in the beginning, when Sadaf, me, and some of we were kind of we were living in kind of one of the suburbs, the richer suburbs in Dhaka. And so when people heard that we were writing, they're basically like, oh, they're a bunch of posh tea drinkers, living in the living in their houses, whatever. And that's what you get when you write in English. People think you're some kind of race traitor, or you're some kind of you're too good to write in your own language. You're trying to pretend you're white or something. And
then you get the alternate from there, a different. reality.
Yeah, and so you're kind of pigeonholed from every which way, you know. You want to be the token Indian, or you want to be the the elitist Indian, whatever you are. Depends on where where you're at home or you're abroad. But it's difficult because it's not your language, and the words in the language, embedded in the language, the mythology is all Greek and Norse. So you have to kind of build your own vocabulary, right? So some of the context, like the word Lucifer, right? Now, when you say Lucifer in English, it's like a bomb, right? It's got a lot of weight to it. When you say the word Iblis in English, which is a kind of equivalent, it doesn't mean anything. There's no emotional weight. So you're struggling with that, because if you're writing about Iblis, then it's you'd rather say Lucifer, and then all the readers will be like, oh, he's talking about Lucifer. So.
Well, I think we're kind of coming to the end of this, but I was just wondering to open the floor up to some questions. Yeah.
One part of the question is for the entire panel and one for you, Saad. Hamlet doesn't feel like it's in Denmark, it would happen anywhere. Crime and Punishment doesn't really look like placed in Russia. It was a novel about the universal human being for many centuries to come. Today, the focus is author, where you placed, is the place, your particular street, a character or not. How has this changed? Is it because of television, media, literature festivals? Is it the evil influence of academics on writing careers? Or that authors no longer think universally and blame it on pigeonholing commissioning editors? Second part of the question to you specifically is, have you tried to use this scenario to trick the publishers in America by saying, here's a Bangladeshi author who comes to India for a lit fest, who's a terrorist, but is actually an alien cum robot?
Maybe we just take 2 or 3 questions at once, just remember that. Because I think we've made it the end. Yeah, would you like to?
Yeah, I just found it very, very interesting that we have 2 on the panelists. One from Nigeria and the US background, and another more rooted in Bangladesh, and each one trying to escape the location where you are from. Like, you go to Bangladesh and then you try to sort of work out I'm pushing you to think about, is it that each writer, each one of us somewhere is feeling in exile from wherever we are, and then, getting something?
Sorry, well, let me just get one more question, then we can. Right at the back, Naresh.
Thanks. Some of what you're describing is what I imagine Salman Rushdie or Amitav Ghosh were confronting in the 80s when they first wrote for the global publishing industry. Is it actually so difficult for you? Are you actually breaking new ground given that these questions were discussed 30 years ago?
Abeer?
I don't know, I can never claim to ever be breaking new ground. I'll start with your question. And I think that maybe everyone feels precious and thinks they're, walking some path and and everyone does have to figure out things for themselves in some fashion. But I do think that, despite it being 30 years on, it's still really, really difficult to get published as a writer of color in the West. I've spent 15 years writing, and this is my first book. And I've queried like hundreds of agents, lots and lots of publishers, and it's been a long road. I mean, I'm not complaining because I get to write, and that's a gift in itself, but it's not been easy in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it's a little bit different, I think, because we're kind of talking about genre. I mean, for me personally, it's not. Yeah, sure, many Indian authors are broken out, but how many have deviated away from kind of Indian, or what's defined as a kind of typically Indian style of writing, and what the people have come to expect and love. And how many have been able to write in genre fiction, I mean, which, you know, is still writing, I mean, it's, you know. Okay, I mean, that's something that can be debated, I think, for a while. And, well, I was thinking about your first question, and I don't know about the Litfest book. It'll be pretty hard to sell that. I mean, you know, but I think maybe there's a lot more authors now. You know, now everybody can be a writer, just because education is widely available. You know, I think historically you had writers that were men of privilege, and you know, generally upper class, and they could write about anything, and there wasn't that many people to contradict them. I think nowadays anybody at all can be a writer. You know, for example, in the Iraq War, there was all these embedded soldiers that were blogging, and at one point, one of the bloggers, his name is Colby, I spoke to him. More people were following him than CNN, because he was giving you you know, the second it's happening, he's like blogging in the middle of the war. So yeah, I mean, I think you know, it's changed a bit.
I just wanted to address your question. There is this idea of having perspective, and so maybe you can sometimes write about a place when you've left it because you're not there. So I think that's part of what drives I do a lot of travel writing, and I found that I can write while I'm in a place, but then also sometimes I write something differently when I'm out of it. And then also genre matters. If you're writing fiction or non-fiction or poetry, then the state of the way you do, you know, the way you approach it will be different. But just, I don't want to speak for Saad, but the idea of escaping a place is not really what motivates me. It's more the idea of what I want to write about, you know. So I've chosen my topics and my style, whatever that is, for whichever work it is. And that's what I'm focusing on, and I'm assuming some speak about why you write what you write.
Oh, yeah, I want to escape.
Well, I think, you know, we've come to the end, but what I will sort of say is I think what we've tried to do in this session is explore, actually coming on from Naresh's comment, that 30 years later, one would have expected, I think, a whole range of a lot of fresh writing. And, you know, we still have, you know, writers like Jhumpa who are still writing the sort of immigrant, perspective that came out 25 plus years ago, and it's still being accepted as genre coming out of South Asia. And one of the things that we wanted to explore, I think, in this session is now as Bangladeshi writing is emerging, can we break out of that? Or will we, you know, will the voice kind of continue the way it is expected to have? So what I would, request you all is to come buy their books, I guess, encourage and, explore other kinds of writing, and let's hope that, all types of voices will be heard in the future.